actually very cool. So Android apps, certain Android apps are eventually going to become completely cross-compatible with Android and Chrome. So they will essentially utilize a unified set of APIs, and you'll be able to open Evernote on your tablet and then open an instant later on your Chromebook, and you'll see exactly the same thing and basically the same UI and be able to do all the same stuff. Even if it means like taking a picture or using voice transcription to enter your text, they want to make the experience totally seamless. And I feel like this could be, and then you have the other stuff like Google Now cards on Chrome OS, and then notification mirroring from your phone to your laptop. This, I think, could be the silver bullet that Google's looking for in that laptop market. Because if you can have your phone and tablet talk perfectly to your laptop, and have your laptop have that level of integration where if you open your laptop, you're basically seeing the same information you would get on your phone, the same quickness, the same ease of use. That's huge, because that's what everybody wants, isn't it? They want to have that unified experience across all their devices. So if you get a text message, it's there on your laptop, and you don't have to worry about it. Obviously, Apple's working on this too with OS X and iOS integration. They're trying to get there, but I feel like Google probably has a technical leg up just because of the way Chrome OS is and the way Android is, and the fact that you're going to be able to have these apps open on both devices and have them work similarly. I feel like that just goes to show how much deeper Google's willing to take this. I think it's very, very cool.
Cool. Right. So let's talk about Google Fit. Of course, there was the little bit of an announcement there about Google Fit and what it is and what it does, and I don't know any of it, so Ryan's going to tell us. Ryan is on
Oh,
mute.
sorry, I was muted. So Google Fit is basically a way for apps to share your fitness data into sort of a unified stream. They have a bunch of partners that have already signed up that are going to participate. So, like Runkeeper and Nike and Adidas, they're all going to make stuff for this. So you'll have, and not just like the app, but like the accessories that pair with the apps. So you won't have these sort of silos of fitness data. So you'll be able to move from one app and service to another and still have all of your data available. I guess it is not available yet. There will be a preview SDK in a couple of weeks.
Cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the apps that came about in Google I/O. Of course, there's an update that rolled out to the environment that I work at. At work, the actual track changes functionality like gets me unexplainably excited. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I use that. I mean, I wrote a whole book in Google Drive in Docs, but I couldn't have it edited in that because it didn't have track changes. So I had to actually use Word for like the last month of working on it, which was a huge pain in the butt.
Yeah, I imagine that would be. All right, so let's talk about Google Play Games because we've got some improvements there as well, right, Michael?
Just a few improvements. Most of them are on the developer side. Starting in, I don't think they're live yet, but soon, developers using Google Play Games will have access to the OpenGL system, which means better graphics, the new Android extension pack, which also means better graphics, lots of tools specifically for making very impressive visual elements just kind of pop out during games. Nothing essential, just making it prettier. There will be a new standard for Android's gamepads using Google Play Games. Obviously, Android already supports gamepads, but there will be a sort of synced function going into it. And on the user side, you will have access to quests, which is new introduced things that you should be able to do in your games. Most of them have some sort of implementation for this already, especially those social games that want you to do this every day or every week and get extra points and go share your stuff on Facebook and all that jazz. And there will be a new interface for cloud saves in games, just a couple of extra fancy stuff that you should be able to see. Speaking specifically about the Android extension pack, Android gamers who are into this sort of thing should definitely check out our post on a Epic Games tech demo. At Google I/O, they demonstrated this new thing with the Unreal 4 engine, which was a couple of guys fighting over some very dramatic Final Countdown kind of battles. And it was a really impressive tech demo. It looked like, I'd say, well above Xbox 360 level of graphics going on a NVIDIA Tegra K1 system. And I think it was actually on Android TV reference hardware. So obviously this is a best case scenario, and there wasn't any actual gameplay going on, but it was some very impressive visual stuff. And
The
we
one
should
thing
be
I'd
seeing.
say, it wasn't on Android TV reference hardware because the Android TV development unit is Tegra 4, not K1.
Ah, okay. Well, they were showing it off at I/O on Android TV, so apparently it wasn't quite the same thing, but it did look very, very good.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that Nvidia's been big on pushing the fact that they have that level of prowess with the new Unreal Engine with K1. I'm not 100% on the thing with graphics demos. They never actually tell you how something's going to work in the real world. They tell you how something that's been perfectly optimized is going to work, and that's cool. But at the same time, when it really comes down to it, it's much less the OS, and it's much more the number of graphical horsepower you can push at the problem. I mean, there are a lot of cool tricks and stuff you can do depending on what your rendering engine is. OpenGL ES 3.1 should bring in some cool new stuff in terms of that. But it's not until developers are using all those tools and we have real world hardware with the chips in it that we see what it's really going to be able to do. We get this promise always, and it's kind of a rant. I mean, I guess when don't I rant about something? And it's basically still the same level of distance. It's like, no, you're still not there yet because obviously you don't have the square inches you need, and you don't have the thermal dissipation you need, and you never will until some radical changes come to the way we actually manufacture chips.
Yeah, the
See,
idea that smartphones and tablets can get the same graphical fidelity that you can get on dedicated systems is ridiculous. It's BS. But this stuff is getting very good, and I do think that unfortunately it's going to be the same sort of situation that we have now, where the games specifically made for NVIDIA's hardware, the stuff that's pushed out specifically for Tegra and whatever the next Shield happens to be, is going to be amazing, and everything else is just going to go for the bottom line, going to go for the lowest common denominator, just to make sure that more people can play their games.
see, the problem is though that they didn't tell you which console they were talking about when they said console
Yeah.
quality. They were actually talking about the PS2. So
Ah, well,
they'll be able to get there.
hey,
I'll get them
console
above
quality is
PS2.
here. We have several PS2 games that are on Android right now, so yes, I would agree with that.
Well, so then mission accomplished. David was wrong.
We're here.
Did you bet a pie on that or no?
I did not.
All right, so Google also announced a new API for Gmail, which is going to give us some cool features in third-party Gmail apps that we might not have been able to utilize quite as well before, right, David?
Wait, where are we?
Google Gmail API.
Oh, Gmail API. Okay, I'm sorry, I was lost on the spreadsheet there. So yeah, the new
Colors thing
Gmail
was lost, I
API
understand.
actually isn't technically new. It's been in preview for some time now. Some developers were allowed access to it. But the idea basically is that how if you set up an email account on a third-party email app, you have to use IMAP or POP if you're, I don't know, like want to torture yourself. But if you're reasonable, use IMAP because it usually supports up and down sync, and it's pretty quick. I mean, with a good IMAP implementation, you can get push email for send that is basically just works, and it works pretty well. But the problem with IMAP is you're still limited to basically the features that IMAP provides. And that obviously doesn't support all the tricky stuff Gmail does, like labels and search, that you would normally want. So Google's been developing a Gmail API as an alternative, and now it's out there for it's a beta release. Any developer can utilize it, and you can implement it in your app. And the other cool thing about the Gmail API is that unlike IMAP or POP, you don't have to have control over the network connections on the device in the same way. You don't have to open up ports to send email because Gmail doesn't use that system to send email messages. At least it doesn't on the user side. So you can implement the Gmail API in a cloud environment, in a very closed environment, without having to worry about routing of SMTP or other email protocols. So it has some pretty big implications for third-party email applications, and I think it's going to be a pretty big deal in terms of getting a more full Gmail experience on third-party email apps, and it could finally allow that third-party email app ecosystem to really bloom on Android. Because right now there are some good ones out there, but there aren't really any ones that I would call great, ones that I would want to replace Gmail with.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about carrier billing because they did have a little bit of an announcement there. And David, I don't know if there's a whole lot to say, but carrier billing is coming to tablets, right?
It is. So if you have carrier billing set up on one of your smartphones,
Android experience that's going to lots of people with a very, very low barrier of entry. They're going to launch it in the fall, specifically in India, with 3 different Android manufacturers, none of which I have ever heard of before. And their first batch of hardware will be under $100. It will all feature dual SIM designs, which is very popular in India and lots of other developing markets. And it will have micro SD card access. So all of you people who want micro SD cards on your Google hardware, go somewhere else and find an Android One phone.
Move to India. And I would like to see this program expanded to the U.S. because I know a lot of people who I would tell to buy things like this. I mean, people who don't want to spend a lot on a phone, so they end up with like the super cheap Samsung phone that runs horribly because it has all of the weird.
this
old
is absolutely, I'm almost sure this is Android Silver in
yeah. This is being this is like a
launch
demo of Android
mode.
Silver. Yeah.
Yeah. This is, and India is so, it's one of those popular things to say, but it's true. India is so in love with Android that it's going to do amazing there. They love
Yeah.
Google, they love Android, and being able to have that Google update experience, along with the fact that Google has some say in how the hardware is designed to keep the price low, is pretty incredible.
Yeah, we were actually hearing rumors leading up to I/O that they were going to announce Android Silver, which sounded not that didn't sound plausible really based on everything else we've heard. So like clearly
Yeah.
this is what people had heard about that made them think Silver was coming. But I mean, yeah,
For it, and there was some speculation they were going to hand them out at I/O, and they didn't. So you actually do have to buy it. You have to buy $1,000 tablet. Uh, but they want people to, developers especially, to get on board with this Project Tango thing and develop experiences that are compelling. They utilize all these extra cameras and sensors and all these extra capabilities. Now, what Regina Dugan said at this ATAP presentation was LG is going to be partner for a retail Tango style device next year. Now, what that really means, we don't know, but we can assume that if Google has enough confidence to say that LG is going to build something based on this basic concept, that probably is going to happen, and it's going to be at least somewhat accessible for consumers, and they do have some idea of where they want to go with it. So obviously, this is everybody's very curious about this, even if you're not into AR VR. The idea is obviously very very interesting in terms of Google, helping to market a tablet that isn't necessarily just your average tablet. So we're going to be obviously on the lookout for that, and when those Tango development tablets